leave me a review, something like that. And they've been hard to get a hold of, but it's actually creating more conversations to call me, so I don't even have to reach out to them anymore to ask for referrals. They're reaching out to me, so it's kind of it's awesome that way as well.
Great, good share, Tyler. And guys, go back to the workplace group. It's probably also in my training archives page. If you don't have any of those links, reach out to me and I'll help you find those.
Hey, Jeff, is it a web app or is it like an app?
It's a web app.
Web app, okay.
But it is mobile friendly. So if you get a Real Estate Wealth Digest email every month, if you happen to be viewing it on your phone, you just click the button and the whole site is enabled for web content. Yeah, for both. So it essentially gives you best of both worlds, but you don't have to download an app.
Cool.
Dave, you will definitely geek out on it.
Oh, dude, I was looking for it and I couldn't find it, and then I went to web and I was like, oh, maybe this is it. So that's perfect.
Yeah, one thing to note is that if your lender has a HomeBot, first of all, originally HomeBot only did this platform for lenders. Then they got all these requests because the realtors were like, well, crap, I'd like to send that out. So now what they do is if you partner with a lender, the cost is way less. Like we pay $100 a month, and the realtor version, which is the exact same version, but it basically brands you on every real estate page. And then if it goes to a mortgage page, like what's going on with the interest rates, then it shows the lender. That if you co-brand it with a lender is only $25 a month.
Nice.
So if you're interested,
and that's, I'm guessing, the link that you're talking about in the workspace or workplace.
I think so. Josh or Dave or Ben, do you have the link handy? You could put in the chat.
Yep. I'll actually what I'll do, because I'll want to send out, Ben and Mike's link. Could I just ask you to put your email address in the chat, and then we'll email you the link?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
You bet.
So another one of your trainings, Josh, we were talking about, I was hoping Sydney would jump on, but I don't see her. We were talking about inflation. You had a great podcast. I think it was your very first podcast with this new financial, what's the name of it again?
Infinite Financial Success Podcast.
I love it. Infinite Financial Success Podcast. I believe it was the first episode. It talked a lot about inflation and how that affects real assets and long-term debt that's tied to assets and stuff. And I was going to have Sydney, just like Tyler did, share a success story. Having that conversation fresh on her mind opened up a great discussion with her mother-in-law, who was talking about Sydney's brother-in-law, how she wanted him to buy his house. He makes great money, successful career, but he doesn't own a home. And then the conversation turned to, well, I don't know if it's the right time. I don't think he should get locked in. Like, let's wait. How many of you heard people say, I'm going to wait and see what happens? And Sydney chimed in, and she just started repeating what had just been kind of through conversation talked about on one of our trainings with Josh and the team about inflation and how that affects home ownership and how that long-term debt is actually a benefit. And as we see rising interest rates, it actually depletes our debt for us, right? And it changed the whole conversation. And I wish she was here to tell her version of it, but it was just like an enlightenment, a different perspective from their real estate professional about why you might want to reconsider and buy real estate. So now they're having different conversations. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I can chat on that real quick. The concept is called inflation-induced debt destruction, and that's a mouthful, obviously. I'm having the guy who came up with that concept. His name is Jason Hartman. Excuse me. He's going to be on the podcast pretty soon as well. But basically, what Jason's saying is, when you're going into an inflationary period. Well, this is always the case, but it's more the case when you're going into an inflationary period, that the value of the dollar in an inflationary period is worth less in 10, 15, 20, or 30 years. So when you have low interest rates, and it's likely we'll see higher inflation rates ahead, which the impetus of that is, of course, all the monetary stimulus and the economy opening back up from COVID. So if we're going into a more inflationary time, then you want to spread out that debt with a fixed interest rate for as long as humanly possible. So, what's the best vehicle for that? Well, you see all these publicly traded Fortune 500 companies raising trillions of dollars in long dated bonds, 15, 20, 30-year bonds, because they know they're going to be making a crap load more money in 10 years. So they want to borrow and put that money to use today and then pay it back with dollars from 2031. Same thing in US households, but the device to do that is the mortgage. So we want to, if you think back, all right, think back 30 years ago. Are you making, or 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, are you making more money now, or were you making more money in the year 2000? Well, probably everybody would say I'm making a lot more money now. Well, if you think about spreading debt over 30 years, you want to pay back that debt when you're making a lot more money. And if there's inflation ahead, that means you're going to have wage growth, especially for realtors and mortgage professionals, because we get paid in commission off the price of the house. So if we think house prices are going to be worth more in the future, we're going to make more money, and the sales prices are going to be higher, then we want to stretch our debts out as long as possible. And by the way, Jeff, I have had that conversation with no less than a dozen clients, and every single one of them was like, holy crap, that makes complete sense. I've never thought of that. Let's go. This is the loan I want to do. Like, game over.
Josh, I'll jump in on that too. When you presented that and sent that link to Jason's TED Talk, was it maybe, whatever it was?
Yeah.
That blew me away, because I'd never really thought of it like that. And I know we covered this in another session here, but I just want to just super emphasize that it's like amazingly eye-opening when you see it broken down so simply, like he does in that YouTube video. And especially what now with this sort of thought of this inflationary period we're going into, it's just a great conversation to have. And I just want to totally emphasize what you're saying here. It's really cool.
Yeah. And it's common sense. It makes sense, right? Like, I know that I was paying a lot less money for an airplane ticket 10 years ago than I am now. So, or for a hotel room. So if I can keep constant the price of the debt, the mortgage rate, but the value of the debt goes down, then I want to pay you back with less valuable dollars in the future, not today's full value dollars. It makes sense, but when you get people to think outside of their box or their normal understanding, that's that game-changing moment that Tyler was talking about when we transition from salesperson to advisor. And then when we go to advisor and then give them clients consistent data to continue coming back to us for more real estate and mortgage advice, then we become lifelong partner and advisor. And that's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, I like it. It adds another layer to the conversation that simplistically we can talk to our clients that aren't homeowners about the value of locking in their payment, right? Locking in that payment for 30 years, because they can look back on what they used to pay for rent 5 years ago, whatever, however long they've been renting, and what they're paying now, and it will continue to go up. That's the very basic conversation is, hey, you get to lock in your living expense. But when you add in the value of the dollar and being able to pay down the debt on the ownership of that asset with future deflated values, it really does add a whole new spin to it. Makes it pretty interesting.
Agreed. And again, I think it just goes back to the more of this information that we have running around in our head, and then people ask our advice, well, what should we do? Right? The discussion is totally different when we have frame of reference and information to really give them insight into the market and have them think differently. And that's where I think we get people's, that's where we start to earn their respect.
I love it. Those were just kind of the two recaps I wanted to bring up.
Hey, any chance you recorded that? I'm sure you've got a link to what Josh shared. Can we see that again? Or is there several of us on here that haven't seen that?
Which one, Troy, when he talks about HomeBot or the inflation discussion?
Inflation discussion. I'd love to share that. It'd be fun to it really is an interesting conversation when you got the firefighter friend that tells you he'll be loyal to Troy Critchfield forever as the realtor. And he's a firefighter for West Jordan City. And he's calling me excited. And I'm going, dude, you missed the boat. Like, where you been? Like, your house is worth 500 now, but what are you going to do? And he's like, whoa, what do you mean? I'm like, I know Jeanette wants a nicer kitchen. Do you want to go spend $750?
Well, Troy, click on that link right there. I think the longer discussion on the topic is the first episode of Josh's podcast. It's in the link in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
He also mentions those other resources in that podcast.
Yeah.
And really, that's what you're saying. I mean, you look at the opportunity. Jared's been in his house for X amount of years. He's a client that has always trusted me in the process, but they all forget that the house that they sold last got them where they are now, even though they wish they hadn't sold that home. It's like, how do you help them understand the position they're in and the opportunity that rates, the low interest rate inflation create for a client that's, he's awesome. He's a firefighter. He's a SWAT, but can you go sell him a 750 house? I don't know.
So Troy, I think you can combine these conversations with somebody like him and have that inflationary discussion. The information will get on there along with maybe getting him set up on a HomeBot.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, Josh, what other talking points we want to move on to?
Sorry, I was just sending Troy a quick email there.
Okay.
Well, I think we've kicked it off really nicely with this concept around, being an advisor rather than a salesperson. And what are the data points that we need to know about the current housing market? So when clients ask that question, should I buy a house now? Did I miss the boat? Where's the market going? We have, I personally would never say, well, I promise you the market's going up, right? Like that wouldn't be my response. But my response also shouldn't be, well, crap, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Like the moment that I don't have something valuable to add to that conversation and to teach that client that's asking that question, I start to lose my impact, my authority, my influence. Dr. Robert Cialdini is a professor on influence, and I think every salesperson should study him. And as soon as somebody moves into that position I'm talking about of being an educator and a teacher and demonstrates that they know more on the topic than the client does, you up your influence. You have more impact and authority over that person's decisions. And I don't mean that in a manipulative way. I mean that in a like a fiduciary advisor way. But I was recently listening to I got an email from a realtor, great realtor. Him and his team are top 10 in the state of Utah. High profile realtor. Everybody would know their name if I told you, which I won't. And in his email, it was a YouTube video, and the YouTube video title was something like, "What's happening? What you must know about Utah real estate values now." And I was like, damn, that's a good headline. Boom, click on the YouTube video. It's a 7-minute video. I'm like, all right, you got my 7 minutes. That was a killer headline. By 30 seconds in, he said verbatim. Now, I'm not telling you that I know what's going to happen with the real estate values. I mean, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be retired right now and I wouldn't be selling real estate. And I was like, what? What the hell did you just say? You just lost every ounce of influence over anybody who's watching that YouTube video. And I actually turned it off. And I went like, why did I turn that video off? Well, I turned the video off because he lost all the influence, because he went from positioning himself as an advisor, somebody who who had critical information as to what was happening with Utah real estate values now. That's advisor, you know, stuff that I need to know. And then he, within 30 seconds, transitioned to, he doesn't have a crystal ball. And if he did, he wouldn't be selling real estate. And I was like, video over. So my point is, I walked away with that and I went, man, all right, not only do I need to know, do we need to know what's happening with real estate, but I think we need to know at one inception point deeper. I think we need to know why it's happening. Like, why are prices going up? Great question. Like, what are the data points? So I went in and I created this quick slide deck. It's like 10 slides. And this is really the why I believe real estate values are doing what they're doing. And Jeff, you know, at any time, if you want to interject, or anybody else, you're always welcome to just jump in here with questions or anything you want to add. So this is all uber current data. Everything in here has been updated with the most current data as of the last week that I could get. So most of these reports are probably February or March data, depending on how often they came up. And basically what I wanted to create with this presentation was not only what's happening, but I wanted us to be able to answer the question for a client, send out these slides, repurpose this. I'll send the content so you have it. And I wanted us to be able to, my loan officers and you as realtors, to be able to give the why and explain not only the supply side of the equation, but the demand side of the equation when it comes to housing. And just back to, you know, the comment earlier that Tyler made, you know, I think what makes NEO different, and this dovetails into exactly what Tyler was talking about in regards to becoming the advisor. What I think's wrong with the mortgage industry, and I would say, you know, potentially the real estate industry too, is that we have been up until this point very transactional and interest rate focused in the mortgage world, fee focused in the real estate world. And what makes NEO different, and hopefully you different, is that our mission is to create relationships that continue to add value long after the buyer's loan closes. Hence things like HomeBot. And there's a few more ideas on how you can get this information out via HomeBot as well. So we believe at NEO, if we're doing our job right, the loan closing is just where our relationship begins. And when we have uber short inventory, it's the value of our circle of influence and our past clients and our ability to be thought of as a professional and an advisor that is going to get us the valuable transactions we need to make it through this challenging market. All right, so let's just start.
I have a question about that. So what about those folks like myself that's brand new? Let me give you an example. So my neighbor's house sold and is sold for way more than what our market is in our neighborhood. And I can't help but think that he had contacts. He knows people. And so how do I get those contacts? How do I get to know those people so that I can have that confidence that, yeah, I can sell your house for $375. I can sell your house for $430. You know?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think part of it is building your database, and Tyler left us some breadcrumbs. You know, it didn't sound like Tyler had a huge past client database. If you do have a huge past client database, I think you've got a leg up here. But if you don't, then you can take a tool like HomeBot, which sends somebody a monthly real estate wealth digest with their home address in the subject line. It has like an 83% open rate. And you can start saying, you know, hey, I don't want to, what's happening in the real estate world right now is unprecedented. It's unbelievable. And I want to send you a wealth digest. I want to adopt your home, and I want to make you aware of the amount of equity that you're building each month, because these are unprecedented times. And I think you need the analytics on your property. And you could have that conversation with, you know, at church, at a cocktail party, at a family, anytime. And I would be adding as many people in my sphere of influence into HomeBot and just making them aware of how vibrant this market is.
Okay.
And specifically to their home, right? Which is more important than how vibrant the overall market is.
And I have had this conversation at church already.
Awesome. Hey, Josh, I got a question. I was just kind of thinking of this as Kim was talking about maybe adding people to her database. With HomeBot, would it be possible for her to maybe target her neighborhood? Hey, you are my neighbor. This is what's been happening in the neighborhood. I have a tool I'd like to offer you that will help you A, B, and C, track your equity, make future plans, blah, blah, blah. And then have maybe a QR code on that postcard where they could pick up their phone and go to a demo site or a registration site to get that tool for themselves. Have you guys worked with anything like that?
100%. So let me share a different screen. I just pulled up HomeBot while you were talking. Can you see this HomeBot screen here? Oh,
no.
Sorry. You didn't hit the share button yet.
Here it comes.
All right, how about now?
Yep.
Okay, so HomeBot has two different functions. It has homeowner leads, which is the real estate wealth digest. If you're going to adopt somebody's home, take it under your wing, and you're going to send them the real estate wealth digest every month, then this would be the URL that would go to my HomeBot downline, if you will, right? Everybody in my HomeBot, I would give them that link. And that's what I would give to a homeowner. That's somebody that, and you could create a QR code out of that link. You could also just copy and paste that into your social media. You could also copy and paste that into an email and email it out. You could also copy and paste that into a text message. And every time you talk to a homeowner, just say, hey, are you getting a real estate wealth digest every month? Oh yeah, we analyze the value of your home versus your mortgage balance and send you an equity wealth digest like a financial advisor. I'll text it to you. And you could just text it to everybody who comes in the open house or that you meet. And then there's buyer leads. The other function of HomeBot is it basically has, let's call it Zillow-esque functions where people can search for homes, but they're all searching under your ecosystem, not under Zillow that's selling these leads to 100 different realtors. So you could just, once you sign up for HomeBot, you'll get both of these URLs. These can be put in emails, text message, social media, or to your point, create a QR code.
Awesome. I love it.
Okay. So I'm going to keep rolling here, but again, I welcome any interaction. Love to answer those questions. Okay. So going back to, where we are in this real estate cycle here, this is the most, on the supply side of the equation, this is the most important slide I think we need to understand and be able to show our clients. If we look back to 1977, and by the way, I've gone to the Federal Bank of St. Louis and looked at their website. This data goes back to like the 60s, I believe. The average number of homes, new construction homes being built in America has averaged about 1.5 million going back to the mid 60s. In this graph, it shows 1977, but trust me, that's the long-term average. And you can see we got up to 2 million new homes being built in, let's call it 1979, 1978. Too much supply. Housing values slowed down, and you saw a big trough. Home builders slowed down because there was too much inventory. Inventory goes north of 2 million homes, too much supply, home builders pull back. But the trend line over this period, this is 43, 45 years, whatever it is, has averaged about 1.5 million new homes per year. Well, here we go. We get the run up in 2005, 2006. We spend a couple of years, multiple years above the 1.5, way up to almost 2.5 million new homes, way too much house, inventory goes through the roof, boom. There's some other factors I'll talk to you about, but boom, we get the Great Recession. And now new home construction, every builder that we all know went out of business, except maybe a few. And now we're in this trough. But check this out, team. If 1.5 million is the trend line, let's call that equilibrium, right? That's like not too many homes, not too few homes. We haven't been at equilibrium really since 2008, which is 13 years we've been in this hole of not enough supply. And then last year, 2020, comes COVID. So we just make it back to equilibrium. We're not in overbuilt land. we're still just, we make it back to equilibrium, and boom, number of houses being built go from 1.5 million below a million, and now we're trending back up right around the 1.5. But this is what leads to real estate recessions and pullbacks in price. Let's look at what happened from 2001 to 2000, let's call it 2006. We had literally 5 years. No, it goes back farther. This is like 99. From 99 all the way to 2000, let's call it 6, 7, we're in the 1.5 to 2 million homes being built per year. This is oversupply. This is massive undersupply, and we've never gotten out of it. There's simply not enough homes that have been built over the last 3 years to satiate the demand. So anybody who says we're at the top, prices have never been this high, they have to fall back, BS. There's not enough homes that have been built over the last 13 years. And we won't have a pullback in price, in my opinion, until we have multiple years of new housing construction greater than 1.5 million. So that tells me we have a huge deficit of supply. Now, that's not the only factor, but it's one. This next slide is real quick. This is a shorter time frame graph. Sorry that the graphics aren't great, but this goes back to 2011. It shows new construction, but it shows this hole as we were hitting 1.5 million houses being built. We get this pullback because of COVID, which drops down the number of new construction homes, which just added, it exacerbated the situation we had with inventory. All right, so let's talk about existing home inventory. All right, so if we go back to 2000, we see existing home inventory. This is the total number of houses listed nationally in the MLS. It's averaged about 2 million, right? This is kind of around 2 million. Then we get this kind of crazy period where we had too much inventory. These are millions on the left-hand axis over here. So now we get 3.5 million houses listed for sale. Watch out below, too many existing homes for sale. What's going to happen to prices? Well, we know what happened after 2009, right? That prices went down, builders pulled out of new construction, but slowly we burned through this inventory. There was 4 million homes for sale about at the peak. Well, look at 2021, team. 1.050 million homes for sale nationally, 1/4 the peak of inventory before the crash, approximately. And there's 330 million Americans in America today. A lot more Americans than they were in 2009. So if you think those numbers out, there's 1 million houses for sale and 330 million American citizens. So there's one house for every 330 people. And in some areas, even less than that. In areas that like Utah that have really high net in-migration, the numbers might even be more skewed. But one home for sale per 330 people is just not enough housing inventory. So let's look at this run up, right? If we look at the years before the Great Recession and the real estate crash, this is number of months homes for sale. 3.956. All right, radar should be going up. We're greater than 6 months inventory, which means we're no longer in a buyer's market. We're going into a seller. Am I saying that right? No, we're no longer in a seller's market. We're going into a buyer's market because there's a lot of inventory for sale. And then we hit 9.6 months worth of inventory. This is 2007. You can see that on this graph right here. Tons of homes, 4 million houses listed for sale. Way too much inventory. That tells me we're going to have a pullback in prices. Inventory goes up, prices go down. Well, what's happening now? 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Inventory goes down, supply goes down, price does what? Price has to go up. It has to go up. There's just, unless demand completely falls off and there's no demand, there's not enough, there's limited supply. When supply goes down, prices goes up, unless demand completely goes away, which I'll show you a slide for that too. So let's look at it year over year. This is year over year change in inventory. Let me try and blow this up just a hair. So in Utah, The number of housing inventory year over year is down 68.1% compared, according to Realtor.com. Nationwide, inventory is down 52%. So team, when inventory goes up, prices go down. When inventory goes down nationally by 50%, prices are going to go up. They have to go up unless demographics fall off and there's no home buyers. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the buy side of the equation. Everything we've talked about up until now has been the supply side of the equation. The number of housing inventory and new home construction, that's all supply. Now let's talk about the demand side of the equation. That's the other piece that we need to think through and we need to advise clients to think about. So generally speaking, the average first-time home buyer is 33 years old, right? This is the millennials that are turning 33 today that we all know about. And what this breaks down is the number of US births by generation. So what did the births look like in baby boomers? What did it look like in Gen X? What does it look like for millennials? And then after millennials is Gen Z. So if you go back 33 years ago, because the average homeowner is, or home buyer, first-time home buyer is 33 years old, then we should be able to tell demographically, well, hey, if we had a growth spurt, a population spurt 33 years ago, that means we've got a bunch of new home buyers, which is these millennials coming into the market. So that's what this chart illustrates. Now let's go back to 2006, right? Let's go back to this, this graph here. What was happening with our supply of months of home? We're getting a big increase in inventory in 2006 and 2007, preceding the pullback. What was happening with the number of housing inventory nationally? We had 4 million approximately homes for sale at this time. Well, let's look at what's happening at the birth rates at that time, team. The Generation X birth rates went all the way down to almost 3 million birth rates. So you had a demographic shift that deteriorated your supply, your demand, because there's less first-time home buyers. So right at the point where home builders were like, just build it, they'll come, it's all good, just buy the dirt and build, who cares, they're all gonna come. Oops, demographically, we had a significant pullback. And if you look at this, the demographics of 33-year-olds, let's call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. For 10 years, the demographics had been slipping. A little bit less first-time home buyers, a little bit less first-time home buyers, till all of a sudden, demographics went from above 4 million 33-year-olds each year to now almost 3 million. That's a 25% decrease in the demand side of the equation. Now that's a heavy slide. So before I go any further, I want to pause right there. Does that make sense? Did I explain that okay? Or is that like, does that not land for anybody?
No, it's excellent. That was beautiful. It really is incredible to look at that. Like when you compare the numbers with the inventory, you see that it really is a trend. Even in inflation right now per PDF plywood, it really is fascinating.
Yeah, I'm with you. So when a client asks, oh, go for it.
Hey, I was just, when we talked about this afternoon, it really struck me that perfect storm element. I was going to throw out, maybe semi-sarcastically, as a member of Gen X, I can also say the slacker generation, that 33 might have pushed a little, average might have pushed a couple of years past that too. So even when they hit that perfect storm, there may have been fewer of those Gen Xers that are actually looking to buy a house too.
I thought the millennials were the slackers. Is the Gen X the slackers? For sure.
They can't stop playing games on their stupid phone that should be making them money.
Yeah, my kids keep showing me all these YouTubers, Troy, that are making like 10 million a month. So that argument isn't holding up very well in my house. I'm losing that argument. All right, team. So let's recap. Okay, I want to bring it all home. To Ben's point, we had the perfect storm. We have literally from let's call it 1991 through 2006, an increasing number of new home construction. And I'm going to say somewhere around 2002, 2003, we got into this irrational exuberance. And we could talk about, lending standards. I can give you a few more data points, but somewhere here you got irrational exuberance, and somewhere here over 2 million, we got into irrational exuberance. And whenever you have a pullback in home builders building homes, that's because there's no demand. So they went too far and pulled back. We went too far and pulled back. But team, we're just not there. This is no irrational exuberance. We just can't get the homes in the ground fast enough. And if we look what was happening at that time, the same time there was irrational exuberance in the housing market in terms of builders building, we had two other factors hit us. Demographically, we were on a 10-year slide. Now, this goes from 4.2 million to 3.3 million. That's a 25% approximately reduction in your buyers at the same time that builders have irrational exuberance. What the heck did we think was going to happen? But that is not what's happening today. Today, we have our first-time home buyers, the 33-year-olds, hitting almost 3 million. And if you look at the demographic chart going forward, because all we have to do is count the number of 33-year-olds that were born in each year, we peak above 4.
Josh, you froze if you can hear us. Is he frozen to you guys too?
Yeah. Somehow we
Josh, we lost you.
so strange. Blame Comcast, I guess. Josh, are you there? Are you still there? They get booted.
Looks like he's probably gonna have to log back on. Boy, comparing these two dynamics really makes it more clear, huh? When you look at the population and you look at the inventory, this isn't a generalization. This is pretty specific data that I love that he put this together for us, and we'll get these slides that you guys can share these talking points. But
I really do. I love that, you look at like the history that we have here with experts in the market, right? The champions that are in the market, and the memory that we all have, and we could pull Eric in on this, but when you look at the behavior of the buyers and the behavior of lots and the behavior of price and all of it, it's like, it really is fascinating when you think about where we're at with everybody looking at Utah. And it's like, Utahns ought to be called Utards, because we're done selling to Utahns, man.
Well, what I like about what Josh is sharing as well is most of the comments and opinions you have are very generalized. Josh is really drilling down into specifics on the correlation between these two things. And it's like, it just makes sense. There's no argument here on what's going on. And we see you're back, Josh. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. My internet just dropped.
Crazy.
I can only assume there's too many millennials in the world eating up all the internet. I don't know what happened there. All right, I'll finish with just one or two more slides here, if you don't mind, Jeff.
Please do. I think we're all eating this up. This is great content, Josh.
So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm glad it's valuable. So we had the oversupply and the under demand. We've squashed this under demand conversation. Like, we've got 4 million for the next 15 years, 4 million people turning 33. That is an army of first-time home buyers. And we know that we're coming out of a 13-year supply glut. And so just kind of anecdotally, Like I found this stat and I thought it was incredible. So in 2020 alone, Lennar, which is I believe the largest home builder in the United States, built nearly 53,000 homes, and it currently has a backlog of 9.5 billion, thanks to incredibly high demand and limited supply. So if you go back to 2008, right, this is their demand for housing. This is their backlog. So the reason why I put this in the demand side of the equation is that these are people waiting to buy homes. They're on a backlog. They're back, whatever it is, 18, 24, 36 months, 9.5 billion of backlogs. And so, what about all the future 33-year-olds that are going to turn 33, that are going to be home buyers in 2 years, and they're going to come to Lennar or some other home builder, and they're going to say, yeah, we're out 2.5 or 3 years. We'd love to help you in 2025. Get on our waiting list. Well, what happens to those people? They either go back to renting, or they go back to existing home sales, and they continue to push up the price of existing home sales. But it's not, my point with this slide is the demand is massive. Builders across the country have backlogs, and they're not going to dig out of these backlogs anytime soon. These are epic proportion backlogs of a waiting list of homes. I'll maybe just share one more slide for somebody who might be scared, stigmatized by the last crash. If we look at the years leading up to the Great Recession, actually, I'm going to share 2 more slides. Sorry. 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, average appreciation. And by the way, this is by CoreLogic and Black Knight. This is the premier analytic companies when it comes to real estate in the world, I believe. You average 10.3% appreciation over that 4-year period. Now, this may not play in Utah, team, because we've had exceptional appreciation. But if you look nationally, like for a national macro trend in the United States, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, they've been great years, but the average appreciation has been significantly less than this period of time. Now, why is that? We've got better demographics, less supply. How is it that we've had less appreciation? Well, here's the home price index for mortgage credit availability. So the higher this number is, I'm going to try and make this a little bit bigger. The higher this number it is, the easier it is to get a mortgage loan. Once this number crosses like 700, you either have to be able to, fog a mirror or spell your name, but not both. Either one will get you a loan up in this range. Like, if you can, write petroglyphic signs on papers, you're good. You're qualified. So you can see that we have this run up 2004, 2005, 2006, 2002, 2003, 2004. So when credit got loose, appreciation went crazy because there was all kinds of speculation. Well, that credit index is now down near its all-time lows around 100, which is officially in the PIA stage. PIA is pain in the ass stage. So we're in the PIA range. Anything below 300 is a PIA stage to get a loan. And just when credit standards were getting just a little bit easier, oops, COVID, boom, back down, back to the toughest lending standards we've ever seen in the history of our country. So, that's kind of the most important slides. And when I get a client who's like, I'd really like to buy a house because I've got 3 new kids, but I know we're in a bubble and I can't wait to crash till the crash. I'm just going to wait and save my nickels. I'm like, jump on a Zoom. We need 15 minutes to go over these slides. And that's a game changer moment.
Can we get a copy of that slide?
Absolutely. I'll send it to you right now. And you can feel free to copy this slide deck if you want to use it in your social media or to email them individually. Like, just take it and make it yours.
Sweet. Thank you.
Or if you ever want me to give this presentation to a client, just introduce us and say, hey, Josh, John thinks the real estate market's going to crash. Do you have anything you might want to share with him?
Isn't it fascinating how many people are that way? They really do fall into, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm done looking. I can't compete. I don't like the idea of competing. And I'm just like, oh man, like, so it's not, they think it's going to get better. They really do.
I have folks saying, oh, I've been waiting for the prices to go down, but it's been, a year, 2 years. If they're not going down, I might as well just buy before it keeps going up. So that's kind of the feedback I've been getting from people is I better buy now because it just keeps going up.
Well, and that's very generalized, what we were talking about earlier, right? That's very generalized. They assume that it's got to come out because they're so high and prices haven't been higher because they're comparing it to wrong data. So thanks to Josh, you've got some visuals, you've got some talking points that can show them why it's not going to change anytime soon, but they're not going to be able to combat or debate that with other data to say, well, these are the sources that I'm citing to show that it's going to drop and it's going to fall, right? It can't be both.
Yeah, we want to move them from opinion to data. And we want to get into a conversation around, look, what are the dynamics that control price? Your argument is the price is too high and that it must come down because, it's like a theory of relativity or Newton's theory. Somebody jump in here. This is not my wheelhouse, but what comes up must come down, right? It's that kind of opinion that you have, but what impacts the price of a commodity or a resource or something that's valuable is not opinion. It's not, I think it's too high. It's supply and demand. That's it. It's supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand and a little bit of supply, those many people are going to bid up the few resources. That's what it is. Unless you get, there's some other things at play here, like credit getting way blown out of whack. And we've got slides for that. But the goal is to get people from opinion to facts and reality and data. And when we do that, the light goes off in people's head and they go, shit, you're not trying to sell me. You're trying to teach me. I would have never have thought this many steps into the process. And now I have loyalty to you because I trust you. You've taught me something that I didn't know before we entered into this conversation. And I thought I was just going to, negotiate your interest rate, right? Like I got to get off that conversation. I got to get off the commission conversation and into the data and education conversation.
Well, and that's hard to do without visuals like this. I mean, imagine Josh giving this presentation without flipping back and forth between those slides and showing you the births and the build, right? It made it more impactful and memorable. And so I appreciate you sharing these with us, Josh, because I think we all should probably listen to this again and go through those visuals and maybe store them on your phone when you're with somebody having a conversation. You can pull up that slide, say, let me show you something. And then you can have that talking point, because I'm not really good at pulling stats and data out unless I have rehearsed and studied and really delved into it recently. I tend to be a little bit more vague in generalizations on what's happening, but people need specifics, like Josh said. People need data, and I know I can improve on this, and this is super helpful, Josh.
Well, and I went, I went pretty deep. Like if I had somebody who was a CPA or an attorney, I might go this deep, like that kind of level of thinker. But most clients, I have this conversation and I only show them 3 slides. Like, look, here's the supply side of the equation. Here's the demand side of the equation. And here's what's happening to credit. And here's why it got all wonky, because credit got way out of line, and supply, demand, and credit is in tow. That's the only place, values are likely to go. I'll show you one last thing I'll send you, because something Kimberly said made me think of this. Actually, maybe it could have been Troy. But this is the change in house prices updated monthly, broken down for every state in the country, going back to the last year, the last 5 years. So in Utah, home prices have gone up on average 56% over the last 5 years. Try and make that a little bigger. But check this out. This is what blows people's minds. They think I'm lying to them. Let's go back 30 years to 1991. 386%. That means your $100,000 home is worth almost $400,000. And if we think about this kind of long term, if the demographics equal more demand and we have constrained supply over the long term, you're likely to see continued long-term appreciation just like this. And if you think that out, Jeff, 386% compound appreciation in real estate over 30 years. That's a compounding rate greater than 10% annually. That's freakishly high. It's crazy.
Yeah, and people wonder what to invest their money in.
Bitcoin.
No,
Gosh, this is
one
awesome.
This is one steady in our economy is real estate for sure. And these stats really kind of show you you can kind of see the years to come. What did you say? There's another decade of that growth and population increase of 33-year-olds that hit that home buying stage?
I need to count it, but I'm just rough estimating it. I think it's 15 years that we'll have 33-year-olds around the 4 million mark, which is massive demand as compared to the crash we had in 2006, 2008.
Well, and they're already chasing a backlog. The backlog's getting higher, and now you got the population increasing. There's no merge point in sight.
Yeah, I mean, the only solution that I see for affordable housing is 3D printing or modular homes. Like that's it. I don't, or some like catastrophic economic event. But I think even an economic recession and pullback, I believe we will have one in the next couple of years. I think housing will do exceptionally well because I think you still have not enough supply, tremendous amount of demand. And what happens when we go into a recession, team? Rates go down. Next recession, mark my words, we'll see a 2% 30-year fixed mortgage rate. It's happening. So even though the prices are going up, nobody buys price, they buy payment. So in the next recession, which will happen in the next 2 years, that's my forecast, we'll see a 2% 30-year fixed interest rate. Home prices will continue to go up. That's my guess.
You know, this is kind of a conversation I have with some of my investors too, is because when Lynn and I were young and as we were trying to build a portfolio for retirement, that was connected to a lot of different things. And one of those was the unpredictability of what the economy, the country is going to be like when my kids grow up. I'm having the same worries now about my grandkids. What opportunities or lack of opportunities are they going to have? And, you know, as we started building that portfolio and it got to a certain point, literally one of our discussions was, if nothing else, we've gotten to a point where we have a home for each one of our kids.
Yep.
So everybody has their own why and their own motivation for investing. It's not always about, you know, sun, sand, and beaches and retirement. It's about security and it's about family and legacy too.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother set of reasons to make the decision to buy versus rent, right?
For sure, for sure. Well, hey, Josh, we're at the top of the hour. It's 8 o'clock. Straight up, this has been awesome. Great content. Anybody have anything they want to add or ask a final question to Josh before we let him go hit the sack so he can get up at 3?
Thanks, everybody. Really
All
Thank
right.
you. Awesome content.
Hey,
Thank
Josh,
you so much.
you'll email me those slides.
I'll do it right now.
Okay, and I'll get that uploaded into Workplace, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate you.
everybody. Have a great night.
Have a good night. See you guys.
Bye.